Sometimes it's the things that you are taught when you are younger that either allows you to be productive or you become counterproductive in everyday situations because of what you've learned. This is something that it means something to me. This message that's going forward today, it means something to me. Mashiach said that in the last days, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold or shall grow cold. Now, I want you to think about what he's saying. He says, the love of many shall wax cold, which means he's not referring to our enemies who don't have love for us anyway. He's not talking about people who are not good-hearted people. He's not talking about people who do not have love in their hearts. He says the love of many shall wax cold. And what he's saying is people who normally had a good heart, people who normally or formerly had love in their heart in the end times. One of the signs that we're in the last days is that love will wax cold, which means that there were people who were associated that at one point in time demonstrated love. At one point in time, they looked out for their brother. At one point in time, they looked out for their sister. At one point in time, they were willing to help the less fortunate. But in the end times, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many will wax cold. We see it happening, family. And as I'm thinking of something like this, one of the things that comes to mind is the fact that a lot of how we conduct ourselves, a lot of how we react, a lot of how we navigate in certain situations has a lot to do with what we have been taught. It has a lot to do with what we have been taught. Let me see. I want to be able to articulate this in a manner that everybody can understand it. Let me try to go a little bit deeper. Sometimes it's the things that you are taught when you are younger that either allows you to be productive or you become counterproductive in everyday situations because of what you've learned. All right, let me go a little bit deeper. One young man can be from one side of the neighborhood, and another young man can be from the other side of the neighborhood. And simply because of what he has learned from a young age, it will cause him to be counterproductive in an everyday situation, running across somebody who lives on the other side of the neighborhood. Something as simple as somebody stepping on your shoe can snowball into a major event and snowball into a major altercation, all because of how somebody was raised, what they learned at a very, very early age. All right, y'all, okay. They Netanyahu, they feeling me now, okay? I need you to feel me. They feeling me now, okay? But I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. You see, sometimes when you come into this truth because of how you were indoctrinated, you run into everyday situations and you don't truly understand how to navigate and continue to be productive in an everyday situation when somebody has a difference of belief or opinion that you have. You see, we learn these things very early on, or we don't learn these things very early on, and it affects us when we get in these type of situations. The title of today's message is Contention. And it's important for us to navigate and know how to navigate when we're in a state of contention, because we don't want to get to that point where it's too late for us to backpedal and undo some of the things that have been done. Okay. So in Exodus chapter 3, we're gonna start off and we're gonna talk about Moshe. He's chosen by Yah to lead the children of Israel out of Mitzrayim, or out of Egypt, and out of bondage. Okay. And Yah says Moshe is in the house of Jethro, who is his father-in-law, and he's feeding the sheep, and he sees a burning bush, and Moshe is inquisitive, and he says, I got to go see what this burning bush is all about. And so he gets to this burning bush, and Yah he formally introduces himself to Moshe. And Moshe, or Moses, is having a conversation, and Yah is telling him, I'm going to use you to bring my people, Israel, out of their bondage. Verse 7 of Exodus chapter 3, it says, and Yahuwah said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Mitzrayim, or Egypt, and have heard their cry by the reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now, therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. So Yah is like, look, my people have been crying out. They've been crying out, and I've made a promise to their forefathers that I'm not going to leave them in a state of bondage. And he said, it's time for me to come and free or liberate my people. In verse 10, it says, come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh. I want you to highlight, Aki, I will send thee unto Pharaoh. Yah says, I will send thee unto Pharaoh. Somebody drop it in the chat. Who is sending Moshe to Pharaoh? Did Moshe go to the burning bush and say, look, man, my people, they down bad in Mitzrayim. They down bad in Egypt, and I'm going to go. Who said that they would send Moshe to? That's it. Yah says, I will send you unto Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto Elohim, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Mitzrayim, or out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people of out of Egypt, ye shall serve Elohim upon this mountain. And so Yah says, look, don't you worry about it. I'm going to send you, and I'm going to go with you. I'm going to be with you. And the sign that I have been with you is you're going to bring this people out. And when you bring them out, you're going to come and you're going to serve me in this very same spot that we're talking on. And I got a question. Do you believe Yah chose Moshe, or do you think that Moshe chose himself? Drop it in the chat. If you believe Yah chose Moshe, drop a Y in the chat for Yah. If you think Moshe chose himself and say, look, I'm just about to do this thing, drop an M in the chat. Drop an M in the chat. Okay, I see nothing but Y's. I agree, family. But that was just two problems. That was two problems. Go over to chapter 4, Aki. Pick up at verse 1. Moshe, look, it's all good, but Moshe, he got two problems. In chapter 4 of Exodus, verse 1, it says, and Moshe answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice. For they will say, Yahuwah, or Elohim, have not appeared unto thee. So problem one, Moshe says that the people won't shema, as we like to say in Hebrew. He said the people won't hearken, or they won't hear or obey me when I tell them that you sent me to bring them out. So Yah goes on, and we know the passage. Yah goes on, he shows Moshe powers and wonders, and he gives Moshe the power to perform these wonders in the sight of the people. He tells Moshe, hey, look, drop your staff on the ground. Moshe drops the staff on the ground, and it turns into a serpent. And he says, now pick it back up. Moshe picks it up, and it turns back into a staff. We know the infamous thing that he does. He tells Moshe, put your hand in your bosom. I love this part. And Moshe pulls it out and pulls his hand out, and it says that he was leprous as snow. His hand was leprous as snow. He stuck it back in his bosom. He pulled it out, and it returned back to its right color. He said, if they won't believe all of these things, well, what they definitely will believe is go to the river, get water out of the river, pour it on the ground, and it's going to turn into blood in their sight. I don't know about all of you, Mishpachah, but if somebody came to me and they were showing me this, I'll say, okay, this op right here, he knows something. This op may know something, okay? But Yah says, look, they may not believe your words, but they're going to believe you after this. They're going to believe you after you show these signs, okay? Moshe says, yeah, that's cool. I'm all for that. But I said I got two problems. Drop down to verse 10. Drop down to verse 10, Aki. In verse 10 of Exodus 4, it says, and Moshe said unto Yahuwah, O my master, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. Problem number two, Moshe said, look, I can't talk to these people and get these people to follow me. The people not going to hear me. And Yah says, well, when you do these things, they're going to believe you. He says, well, I'm not eloquent enough to have this conversation. I can't articulate what I need to articulate to them in a way that they will receive it and choose to follow me. Verse 11. And Yahuwah said unto him, who have made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb or deaf? Or the seeing or the blind? Have not I, Yahuwah? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth and teach thee what thou shalt say. And he said, O my master, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him who thou wilt send. Moshe is like, look, you just send somebody else. You just send somebody else, somebody that's better equipped to do the job. Verse 14, and the anger of Yahuwah was kindled against Moshe, and he said, is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? So now here we get introduced to Moshe's brother, Aaron, and we see that he's a Levite. And he says, is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee, and when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And thou shalt speak unto him and put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what ye shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and he shall be even he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of Elohim. Question. I'm full of questions today. I got another question. Yah says that Aaron, his brother, was coming to meet him. And Yah says, I know that Aaron can speak well. And he tells him, look, I'm going to give you words to speak, and you give Aaron words to speak, and I'm going to show y'all what you need to do. Question. The words that Aaron were going to speak came from who? Who did the words that Aaron was going to speak come from? If you think that it came from Moshe, put an M in the chat. You think it came from Yah, put a Y in the chat. Look, Yah was already rolling before I could get the letter Y out of my mouth. That's right. That's right. He said that he would give Moshe the words that he needs to give to Aaron, and then Aaron would speak. But the words ultimately came from Yah, okay? And I'm going somewhere with this. Exodus chapter 7, verse 1, it says, and Yahuwah said unto Moshe, see, I have made thee a deity or an Elohim to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. So I got another question. And don't worry, look, it's multiple choice and it's open book. All of these questions are open book. We don't do closed book here at Goshen Group. It's all open book and multiple choice. Who chose Aaron to speak on behalf of Moshe? Yah chose Aaron to speak on behalf of Moshe. The point that I'm making here is that Moshe was chosen. He was chosen to be a great man, but Aaron was chosen too. And so in Psalm chapter 105, verse 26, it says, he sent Moses, his servant, and Aaron, whom he had chosen. So Yah chose Aaron. And so we often minimize Aaron's role alongside Moshe, but Aaron's role was actually vital. His role was important for what Yah intended for Moshe to accomplish. And that's why Yah chose Aharon and gave him the office of high priest, because not only was Aaron's role important when he was sending Moshe into Mitzrayim, Aaron's role was important to the nation once they came out of bondage. Moshe goes on to be a great man. He goes on to be a great man. He goes on to be established. And we know for a fact that Moshe was chosen by the Most High. But not only does he go on to be a great man, he goes on to be one of the most legendary musicians known to man. And I don't mean he was just a musician, any old musician. He was a legendary musician. See, Moshe wrote some of the songs. If you knew that Moshe wrote some of the Psalms, drop a 200 in the chat. Not only did Moshe write some of the Psalms, Moshe also sang the very first song that we see in scripture. Moshe also has a song that's going to be sung, and it's in the last book of the Bible, and it's the last song, well, one of the last songs that is mentioned, and it's called the Song of Moses, and you can check that out in Revelation chapter 15, verse 3. Look, I keep going to it. Look, highlight it for him, Aki. What song did they sing first? The Song of Moses. Moses was a legendary musician. They were singing Moses' song thousands of years before we were born, and they're going to be singing Moses' song in the end times. Okay? But back in Exodus chapter 15, verse 1, it reads that then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto Yahuwah, and spake, saying, I will sing unto Yahuwah, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. Drop down to verse 20. In verse 20, it reads, and Miriam, the prophetess, highlight that. Miriam, the prophetess. Leave that highlighted, Aki. Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam answered them, sing ye to Yahuwah, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. So she's singing the very same song. I like that. I like that, Iman. It's a family affair. Miriam is singing the exact same song that Moses is singing. Now, I know here it says that Miriam is the sister of Aaron, but in First Chronicles chapter 6, verse 3, if I'm not mistaken, it tells us that Miriam was not only Aaron's sister, but was also Moshe's sister. So what I'm showing you here is there's three siblings: Aaron, Moshe, and Miriam. And we've already agreed that Aaron and Moshe were established and chosen by the Most High himself. They didn't choose or establish themselves. But what we saw in Exodus 15 was Miriam was a praise queen. They said she got those timbrels, and they went following her. The other women in the camp went following her with the timbrels, and they went with dancing and singing. Miriam was a praise queen. Miriam was one of the ones that at the feast day we would have standing at the front getting everybody pumped up with song and dance. Okay. But Miriam herself also had a great name in the camp because it said that she was a prophetess. She was a prophetess. She had a great name in the camp because it said that all of the other women followed her. I'm going to tell you something else about Miriam. Miriam is another one who plays a vital role in the passage and the understanding of Moshe and the people, because it was Miriam who stood beside the river. And when Pharaoh's daughter found Moshe, it was Miriam who gave her the idea, should I go get one of the Hebrew women to nurse him? And it turns out to be Moshe's mother that nurses him. Moshe is raised long enough with his mother to understand who he is. So when the calling comes, Moshe understands that even though he was raised in the Egyptian house, he's not an Egyptian, he's a Hebrew. So Miriam's role is super important in the position that Moshe played and what happens with the children of Israel. But I got another question, and don't worry, it's multiple choice again. I got another question, okay? Who do you think established Miriam as a prophetess and gave her a good name in Israel? If you think it was Moshe, drop an M in the chat. Drop an A in the chat if you think it was Aharon. Drop an S in the chat if you think it was herself, a S for self, or drop a Y in the chat if you think it was Yah. That's right. I agree. I agree. And so Aaron, Moshe was Moses, and Miriam, all three held prominent positions in the nation. And Yah ordained that. Yah established that. But when we get to Numbers chapter 12, pick up at verse 1. When we get to Numbers chapter 12, verse 1, we begin to see something happen. Now, although Moshe had an elevated role compared to Aharon and Miriam, all of them were established by Yah, and all of them played a key role in the assembly. In Numbers chapter 12, verse 1, it says, and Miriam and Aaron spake against Moshe because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. And so it says that they spake against Moshe because of the Ethiopian woman. Spake against means to talk down on. They was talking down on Moshe. They were trying their best to ruin Moshe's character. And it says, because of the Ethiopian woman, talking down on Moshe. And so why would Aharon be talking down on Moshe? And just a few chapters ago, Aharon, or Aaron, and Moshe were doing great works together. Aharon and Moshe were going before Pharaoh speaking the word of the Most High. Aharon and Moshe were together teaching the children of Israel that Yah has seen them in their sorrow. They were both working together to liberate the chosen people of the Most High. Just a few chapters ago, Miriam herself is singing what's called the Song of Moses. She's leading praise. They're praising. Somebody had put it in the chat. It was a family affair. Now they talking down on Moshe. They speaking against Moshe. And the question is, how has contention, which is the title of today's message, how has contention made its way into the camp? Now, verse 1 says that it's about the Ethiopian woman. Okay, it says that Aharon and Miriam felt some type of way because of the Ethiopian woman. But let's look at verse 2, because I beg to differ. Verse 2. Verse 2, it says, and they said, have Yahuwah indeed spoken only by Moshe? Have he not spoken also by us? And Yahuwah heard it. And so let me ask you this, Mishpachah. If Miriam and Aharon had a problem with Moshe having an Ethiopian wife, why didn't they say that to Moshe? Why is it not recorded that they said, hey, look, you know what, Moshe, we concerned that you dealing with a heathen woman. You know, you done married an Ethiopian woman, and we don't know if that's going to influence you, and you're supposed to be leading the people, and we concerned, Moshe. Why didn't they come to Moshe and say that? Why does it say that they said, have Yahuwah indeed spoken only by Moshe? hath he not spoken also by us? That's right, Akoti. That's right. I keep do Matthew chapter 12, verse 34. Because Miriam and Aaron or Aharon had every opportunity to come to Moshe and say, hey, look, we don't approve of you taking a Ethiopian woman to be your wife. We don't approve of that. They had every opportunity to do so. But it says, rather, they came and they said, does Yah only speak by Moshe? Don't he speak by us too? Haven't we been established by him too? In Matthew chapter 12, verse 34, Mashiach says, O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So you see, what comes out of your mouth is an abundance of what's in your heart. And so what this leads me to understand is that it was something that was in the heart of Miriam. It was something that was in the heart of Aharon that was bringing this contention into the camp. And when it all came out, when the contention came out of their heart, just like the coach just put up in the chat, they were looking for something within the camp to tear him down. They were looking for something that would put what we call smut on his name. They were looking for something that would discredit Moshe, and the only thing that they could come up with is he's taking an Ethiopian woman to be his wife. It's something that's in the heart of people that causes them to resort to contention rather than state their differences. And when contention is a person's motive, they will try to find any and everything to use against you to tear you down by any means necessary. Whatever they can pull from your past, whatever they can pull about you and your imperfections, whatever they can do to try to tear down your name, they're going to try to find that. In spite of the fact that you are doing great works for the kingdom, in spite of the fact that Yah has done some wonderful things in your life, he's placed a calling on your life, what they're going to do is, because something is in their heart and they have it in their heart to be contention, and we're going to break it down even further than that, because they have that in their heart, they're going to look for anything that they can use against you to make their self look good. So let's talk about what contention is, because I've been using that word loosely, and that's the title of today's message. Let's talk about what contention is. First, let me tell you what contention is not. Contention is not a disagreement. And we're going to deal with that a little bit more later on. Contention is not a disagreement. Contention is a consistent back and forth quarrel or fight between two people. It can be like a debate, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But the thing about contention is not, it doesn't have the purpose of reconciliation or edification. Two people who are in contention with one another are not in contention with one another to edify or to reconcile with somebody. People use contention to demean someone else and to justify themselves. People can use contention to try to make you look bad or you feel bad in order to make themselves look good. See, contention is not two people reasoning together. That's not what contention is. If two people have a disagreement and they sit down to reason with each other and they have some differences of agreement, that's not contention. Contention is bigger than just two people who don't agree. And I said that Aharon and Miriam had something in their heart that made them become contentious. And what it is, family, is contention is rooted in pride. It's rooted in pride. Contention is not, it's not founded in love or compassion. Contention is rooted in pride. Somebody don't believe me. So you know what I got to do. Let's do Proverbs chapter 13, Aki, and pick up at verse 10. That's right, Akoti. That's right. Pride goes before the fall. Let's do Proverbs chapter 13, verse 10. It says, only by pride cometh contention. Only by pride cometh contention, which means that contention is birthed in pride. So because Aharon and Miriam had hearts full of pride. They now wanted the show to be all about them. That's why they didn't come to Moshe and ask him about the woman that he had married. That's why that they immediately resorted to Moshe ain't the only one fit to lead these people. Yah speaks by us too. And here's the thing. Because they had pride in their heart, they were ready to oust Moshe. They was ready to get him out of here. They wanted him out the way. And the lesson in that is when people don't value you as much as they once did, when the things that you're doing for people have become normal, when they don't feel that they need you anymore, when people in your life begin to get too comfortable around you, all of a sudden you're not as important as you used to be. Because see, when they needed Moshe, Moshe was important, but all of a sudden, Moshe ain't as important anymore. And Yah speaks by us, speaks through us the same way that he speaks through Moshe, according to their words. And Aharon and Miriam, what they wanted to do was they wanted to move Moshe out of the way so they could lead the people. Let's do verse 2 again, Aki. It says, and they said, have Yahuwah indeed spoken only by Moshe? Only. Did he not speak by us? And didn't he say that Aharon was a prophet? He was Moshe's prophet. Didn't the scripture say in Exodus 15 that Miriam was a prophetess? They said, has Yahuwah indeed spoken only by Moshe, and hath he not spoken also by us? But watch this. And Yahuwah heard it. Somebody drop it in the chat. Who heard what they were saying when they were trying to tear Moshe down? Who heard it? Yah heard it. Yahuwah heard it. And I'm going to tell you the lesson in their family. Now, Yahoo, I need them. I'm talking to my people. I need them to feel me today. You don't have to respond to every arrow that's being shot in your direction. You see, the Most High, he sees all. He hears all. He knows exactly who he's given gifts and callings to and put in position. And when people speak about you or speak down on you, you don't have to answer every arrow that's shot in your direction, because the script doesn't say that Moshe said anything. It said that Yah heard it. Verse 3. Now the man Moshe was very meek. Highlight very meek for them, Aki. It said that he was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. Now, why y'all think verse 3 is in there? Why do you think verse 3 is in there? Because it kind of seems out of place. It just drops in there to tell us that Moshe was very meek, and it's put in there to help us understand something. But the context of verse 3, it says, now Moshe was very meek, which means humble above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. Verse 3 is in there to show us the contrast in Moshe's character in opposed to Aharon and Miriam's character. Because you see, we just looked at it, that Miriam and Aharon brought contention into the camp because they had pride in their heart. Aharon and Miriam were about self. They wanted to make their self look good. They wanted to put themselves in position where they could be the ones who's seen as leading the children of Israel to the promised land. But Moshe was different, and verse 3 is teaching us the difference. Moshe was always humble and about the Most High Yah's business. And I'm going to tell you, I can imagine that this was heartbreaking to Moshe. This is his relative. This is his brother and his sister. These are his siblings that are talking down about him, that want to get him out the way. I can imagine that Moshe was heartbroken. But see, Moshe is always praying on behalf of the camp. Even when they come up short, even when they transgress, Moshe is always praying on behalf of the camp. You remember when Aharon, he slipped and he allowed the people to convince him to make the molten calf or the golden calf, and Yah was ready to destroy the people? Somebody drop it in the chat. Who prayed on the people's behalf? Who prayed on the nation of Israel's behalf? Drop it in the chat if you know. That's right, Moshe did. When Yah told Moshe, hey, look, go down there and handle business, Moshe came down and he got down on the ones who were worshiping the golden calf and had chosen to worship idols. Moshe got down on them, but guess what? Put it in the chat. Who made the golden calf? Who made the golden calf to start with? That's right. Aharon made the golden calf, but Moshe didn't get down on Aharon. He didn't get down on Aharon because he knew, okay, Aharon, he slipped right here, but Aharon was established. The Most High chose him just like he chose me. And so he didn't get down on Moshe. He didn't get down on Aharon. But now that Aharon and Miriam are comfortable, they begin talking down on Moshe, his name, and his calling. They find some dirt to put on him because of who he's married, and they're what's the word I'm looking for? They are minimizing or demeaning his calling, saying, "Hey, look, y'all can use us to lead the people the same way that the same way that he uses Moshe." And so, what I understood when I began to study this, family, is that when you're walking in your calling, it's always your family that's going to be your first scorners. It's your family that start looking at you with the side eye first. It's your family, your family is the first ones who start having private conversations on the side about you. Your family is the first one to look at you and tell you crazy. You gonna let this run you crazy. It's your family. Your family are the first ones to become your enemies. But I can remember my Mashiach saying that a man's enemy is are they of his own are they of his own household. And he didn't tell us that for no reason. You don't have to go there, Aki. We're gonna move on to verse 4. In verse 4, it says, "And Yahuwah spake suddenly unto Moshe, and unto Aharon, and to Miriam, Come out, ye three, unto the tabernacle of the congregation." And they three came out. Y'all like, look, I'm gonna deal with this. Don't it sound like it's the same thing that I would do in my house, but it sounds like a sibling rivalry going on. And y'all, just like a father said, all of y'all come here. All of y'all come here. Look, I'm about to deal with this. Every one of y'all get in here. Verse 5. And Yahuwah came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aharon and Miriam. Who he called? Drop it in the chat. And they both came forth. And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, Aharon was called a prophet. Miriam was called a prophetess. They both were in their feelings because they felt like Yah talked to them the same way that he talked to Moshe. He says, if there be a prophet among you, I, Yahuwah, will make myself known unto him in a vision and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moshe is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. Moshe here is being referred to as faithful. Now, Hebraically, faithful means to be established. It means to be confirmed. Confirmed. It means to be solid. So we can have faith, but when something is faithful, it's been established. It's been confirmed. We like to say it's 100. It's tried and true. It's tested and proved. And in order to be faithful, you have to be deemed faithful. Yahoo, I don't think they hear me. I'm gonna say it again. In order to be faithful, you have to be deemed faithful. You got to be sealed and solidified as faithful. Your actions have to align to a certain standard to prove that you are faithful. You can say that you have faith, but Yah is the one who says whether or not you are faithful. Faithful is an adjective to describe somebody. And so he says that Moshe is faithful, which means confirmed or established in all my house. Yah is telling Aharon and Moshe that, Aharon and Miriam that Moshe is established in his position of authority in the assembly. Y'all like, look, I did that. I did that. Not Moshe himself. I did that. He's faithful in all of my house. He's confirmed. He 100. He tried and true. He's solid. I deem him faithful in all of my house. So what I need you to understand, family, what I need you to understand, listen to me closely. What people choose to say about you It has no effect on your position in Yah's eyes when the Most High Yah has deemed you faithful. What somebody choose to say about you, or how somebody chooses to try to break you down or tear you down, it holds no weight, it holds no merit in the eyes of the Most High when it comes to you and your calling, if the Most High Yah has deemed you faithful. Why? Because Yah himself has established you. Yah did that. And there's nothing that anybody can say to change that in the eyes of the Most High. Now, if you easily influence, you can be influenced by what somebody has to say about a person. But we're talking about your position in the eyes of the Most High. Yah is making a distinction between Moshe and Aharon and Miriam. He's making a distinction between Moshe and his siblings. And the distinction that he's making between the two is, hey, I have confirmed and established Moshe in the position that he's in. Let's look at verse 6 again, Aki. Verse 6 again, it says, and he said, hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, Yahuwah, will make myself known unto him in a vision and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moshe is not so, who is faithful or established in all mine house. What's the difference? How do we know that he's making a distinction between the two? Verse 8. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently. That means it ain't gonna be no question that I'm dealing directly with Moshe. It says even apparently. Apparently means in plain sight. It means in plain sight. It means that there's no question about how I deal with Moshe. Now, other prophets, I may deal with them in dreams and in visions. And then they come and they either interpret or have somebody interpret what they feel they dreamed or they had a vision about. But Moshe, he says, even apparently, I will deal with him directly, not in dark speeches, okay? Not in dark speeches. And the similitude of Yahuwah shall he behold. It says the similitude of Yahuwah shall he behold. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moshe? Yah is saying, hey, look, y'all remember back a couple of chapters, I think it actually was in Exodus, as a matter of fact, it's in Exodus, when Moshe says, show me thy glory. You don't have to go there, Aki. Moshe says, show me thy glory. And Yah says, look, you can't see my glory. You won't be able to stand there. You see me directly and you're going to die. You're going to die. But I tell you what, I'll let you see a portion of my glory. That's what it's talking about here. It says Moshe is different. And the way that you know Moshe is different because everybody can see that I deal directly with Moshe. I deal directly with him. And Moshe, I've allowed him to see a similitude of my glory or a similitude of me, something that will give him an idea of me, not me directly. Yah is saying, yeah, Miriam and Aaron, I've established you too, but Moshe got the edge on you. He got the drop on you. He got the upper hand. He said, I put Moshe where he is. I speak mouth to Moshe, not in dark sayings that he has to seek to understand, not in something that he has to study day in, day out like we do to get an understanding. He said, I speak directly to Moshe. But I ain't never done that with y'all. I've never done that with y'all. Everything that I've given to you secondhand. I've never done that with y'all. What makes you okay with speaking against my chosen one? How do you feel about how you bring yourself to be okay to speak against the one who has seen a similitude of me? You've never done that. Now, Aki, don't go there. I'm gonna just drop. Somebody put this in the chat. I'm gonna just throw it out there. I'm gonna just throw John chapter 6, verse 46 in the, out there. I'm gonna just throw it out there. I'm gonna throw you another one. I'm gonna throw John chapter 12, verse 50 out there. Don't go there, Aki. We're gonna let them study that on their own time. Somebody drop that in the chat. Drop John chapter 6, verse 46 for the note takers. Drop John chapter 12, verse 50 in the chat. Let them go study that on their own time. But what makes you so comfortable with bringing contention into the camp regarding the one that I have chosen, Aharon and Miriam. Verse 9. And the anger of Yahuwah was kindled against them, and he departed. Yahuwah was hot. He was angry. It says, the anger of Yahuwah was kindled against them, and he departed. Now I got a question. Who did Yah depart from? Let's see who paying attention. Who did Yah depart from? It says that Yah departed. Who did he depart from? Let's look at verse 5, Aki. I told him it's open book. It's open book. This ain't no riddle, but let's look at verse 5. It said that Yah departed, but look at verse 5. That's right. That's right. A coat paying attention. Verse 5, it says, and Yahuwah came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aharon and Miriam, and they both came forth. So initially, he called all three of them down. But when he presented himself, he called Miriam and Aharon to the door of the tabernacle. And so when Yah departs, who Yah departed from were those who were bringing the contention into the assembly. Drop down to verse 10. And in verse 10, it says, and the cloud departed from off the tabernacle. And behold, Miriam became leprous as snow. And Aharon looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aharon said unto Moshe, alas, my master. He's talking to Moshe. You see the tone change? You see the attitude change? Now he's coming to Moshe. He says, alas, my master, I beseech thee, lay not this sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly and wherein we have sinned. You see, that's right. He humbled real quick. You see how people return to you when you're important to them again? See, when Moshe wasn't that important, they was ready to get him out the way, but they know Moshe important now. And you see people return to you when you were important to them and their lives again. But he says, lay not this sin upon us. Where he's actually saying, where it says, lay not this sin upon us, he's saying, don't allow this judgment or don't allow this punishment to pass on us. He's saying, let us not be punished. And then he says, for we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. He said we sinned. Let's see what the scholars have to say. What say the scholars? What was Aharon and Miriam's sin? What was Aharon and Miriam's sin? While the scholars getting it ready, let's do Proverbs chapter 16, verse 5. Look, scholars in the room. We ain't even got to the verse yet. Scholars in the room. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 5, it says, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to Yahuwah. Everyone who is proud in heart is an abomination to Yahuwah. Pride is an abomination to Yah. And we looked at it in Proverbs that contention stems from pride. So if pride is an abomination to Yah and contention stems from pride, and pride disgusts Yah, which is an abomination, is what an abomination means, drop it in the chat whether or not you believe or think that Yah is pleased with contention in the assembly. If you think that Yah is pleased or is okay with contention in the assembly, drop a Y for yes, drop an N for no. Go back to Numbers, Aki, chapter 12. Pick up at verse 12. Because if contention, if pride goes before contention and pride is an abomination, that means that Yah does not approve of contention in the assembly. And so Aharon, he comes to Moshe and he's begging, he's pleading Moshe to do something. And Aharon says, let her not be as one dead of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb. So what he's saying is, if a baby is stillborn and half of the flesh is removed, that's not something that somebody is going to be drawn to. That's not something that somebody's going to be drawn to. Aharon is petitioning Moshe on behalf of Miriam that the punishment or the judgment that Yah has placed on Miriam doesn't get placed on her further, and that it don't get placed on him either. But watch Moshe's reaction. Verse 13. And Moshe cried unto Yahuwah, saying, heal her now, O Elohim, I beseech thee. Even after being scorned, even after being talked about, even after being involved with contention that's due to the pride of the hearts of his brother and sister, when the punishment falls on his sister and his brother comes and pleads with him, Yah cries out to the Most High and he says, heal her now, O Elohim. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. I'm somebody feel me right now. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Look at the difference between the character of Moshe and the character of his siblings. This is why verse 3 told us that Moshe was meek above all the men of the earth, because he didn't have the same state of mind. He didn't have the same heart that his siblings had and that the rest of the men had on the earth. Moshe was never all about himself. Moshe always had his people's best interests at heart, always, even when there was contention in the camp. And see, we can't control how people talk about us. We can't control what people choose to say about us. But what we can control is how we react to it. And just check out Moshe's reaction. Moshe didn't have too much pride to reconcile with his brother and his sister. Even though they were speaking against him, he didn't have too much pride to reconcile with his brother and his sister. And so rather than saying, hey, look, she talked about me, she getting what she deserved, it said Moshe cried out and said, heal her now. Verse 14. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that, let her be received again. Now, highlight if her father had but spit in her face. Now we can't move past that, okay? Because spitting in somebody's face is actually a huge part of Eastern culture, at least in ancient times anyway. I don't know about now, but that's something that we can't really fathom today. Look, you spit in my face, I don't care, we family. Look, that's something to fight over how we was raised. But Yah says that even if her father had spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? So spitting in one's face is a gesture in Eastern culture that that tells someone that you've brought great shame to the family. That it's a gesture that people would use to demonstrate that you've brought shame to our family. Okay, and you can go see, don't worry about going there, Aki, but you can go study in Deuteronomy chapter 25. There is something in Torah that talks about somebody getting spit in their face or being spit in the face because they brought shame to their family. But in verse 15, it says, and Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days. Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days, and the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again. And afterward, the people removed from Hazeroth and pitched in the wilderness of Paran. So, because Miriam and Aharon had brought contention into the assembly and contention into the camp, Yah struck Miriam with leprosy. Now, out of all the punishments that Yah could have chosen, out of everything that he could have done, why do you think that Yah chose leprosy? Why do you think that he chose to place leprosy on Miriam? Out of everything that he could have done, he chose to place leprosy on Miriam. And I'm going to tell you, family, that, look, this is just my thoughts because we don't see anything happen to Aharon. This is just my thoughts. I'm not saying that this is what it is, but it's my belief, it's my thoughts that Miriam, chances are Miriam was the instigator of this all. Aharon played a portion in it too, and I believe that Aharon was going to get his portion too. But I think that Miriam was probably instigating this thing, which is why we see it placed upon her, and we don't see anything happen to Aharon. And Aharon, by chance, happened to come to Moshe with a repentant heart and ask Moshe to petition the Most High on their behalf. Why leprosy? Let's look at the instruction about leprosy, Aki. Let's do Leviticus. Let's do Leviticus chapter 14. Let's do verse 2. And we're gonna look at the instruction or the law, as people like to call it, of leprosy. In Leviticus chapter 14, verse 2, it says, "This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought unto the priest." So the leper is to be brought to the priest. But here he is, verse 3. "And the priest shall go forth out of the camp." Highlight that, Aki. So drop it in the chat. Where was the leper supposed to be once he was pronounced or she was pronounced unclean? Where were they supposed to be? Outside of the camp. That's right. Out of the camp. And it says, "And the priest shall look, and behold, if the plague of leprosy be healed in the leper, then obviously they can come back into the camp." All right, Aki, jump back to Numbers. We're going to bounce around a little bit. Jump back to Numbers chapter 12 and pick up at verse 15. So what happened to Miriam once she was, what did Yah instruct Moshe to do with Miriam once she was struck with leprosy? In verse 15 of Numbers chapter 12, it says, "And Miriam was where?" What happened to Miriam? "She was shut out from the camp 7 days. And the people journeyed not to Miriam, was brought in again." But now that really don't answer the question of why Yah chose leprosy. We do see that Yah put her out of the camp. He instructed her to be put out of the camp because she had leprosy. We did see in Leviticus chapter 14 that when one was a leper, they were to be put out of the camp. But the answer to the question is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 10, Aki. Watch how amazing Yah is. In Proverbs chapter 22, verse 10, it says, "Cast out the scorner." You see, this is why I say I think that Miriam was the instigator. It says, "Cast out the scorner and contention." Highlight contention for the sake of today's message. "Cast out the scorner and contention shall go out. Yes, strife and reproach shall cease." You see, who was the scorner? Drop it in the chat. Who was the scorner in this situation? In Numbers chapter 12. That's right, Miriam. Okay. And what did Yah tell Miriam to do? Where did he say to place her? Outside. That's right, outside the camp. All right. Why? And the answer is to cease the contention that was inside of the assembly, because contention in the assembly is not pleasing to the Most High Yah. And so if you don't promptly deal with contention, what ends up happening is it begins to fester. See, leprosy was contagious. Leprosy was contagious. And guess what else is contagious? Contention. It's contagious. If you don't deal with it properly, it begins to fester, and it's just like a cancer. If you don't root it out, it just spreads and it begins to get worse inside of the assembly. And so remember that pride breeds contention. And if you don't suppress it, if you don't check it at the door, if you're not examining your heart and yourself to check pride at the door, it's going to be your downfall. How do you know that, Netnell? Because Aharon was high priest. He was established. He was chosen. Miriam was a prophetess. She was a praise queen. She was established. She was chosen. But because of pride and because they had contention in their hearts, they were not serving in their role because of the title of today's message. And it's highlighted right there in verse 10. Because of contention. Because of contention, Aharon won't focusing on serving in the role of high priest. Miriam won't focus on being a prophetess. She wasn't focused on leading in praise and worship like she was doing in Exodus chapter 15. The pride was set so deep that they couldn't even see that Yah had established them the same way that the Most High Yah had established Moshe. And when you allow contention to exist, when you don't remove it from the assembly, you don't check it at the door, you don't deal with it and get an understanding and suppress it, what ends up happening is it only gets worse. It only gets worse. And Yah was trying to teach the assembly a lesson. He said, look, when this happened, you have to remove this. Now I'm merciful. I'm not condemning Miriam to death because yeah, she slipped. Aharon, they slipped, but all have fallen short. All have fallen short. So I'm gonna allow her to come back in the camp. But I'm trying to show you, Moshe, Aharon, Miriam, and the rest of the camp. I'm trying to show you that when contention or pride enters into the camp, you have to deal with it, or it's only gonna get worse. And the way that you deal with it is you have to keep it outside of the camp. Outside of the camp. Jump over to Numbers chapter 16. Let's go to Numbers chapter 16. And pick up at verse 1. Because when we don't check or suppress pride and contention at the door, it's gonna grow. It's no question about it. It's gonna spread. And when it spreads, it begins to become dysfunction for the entire assembly. And we see that right here in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1. It says, now Korah, the son of Ishar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moshe. They rose up before Moses. Highlight, they rose up before Moses. That means they came and they withstood Moshe. They came and stood against Moses. With certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly. 250 people who were established. 250 people who were chosen. It says, famous in the congregation, men of renown. And they gathered themselves together against Moshe and against Aharon and said unto them, ye take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation are Kodesh, every one of them. And Yahuwah is among them. They saying, look, it's nothing special about you, Aharon and Moshe. It's nothing special upon you. It's nothing special about you. You're taking too much upon yourself or thinking too highly and mighty of yourself because the entire assembly is Kodesh. Every one of them. And it says, Yahuwah is among them. Wherefore then lift ye up yourselves above the congregation of Yahuwah. They said, what makes you better than all of the rest of the congregation? Now, wait a minute. Drop a 1,000 in the chat if you can see that this is the same thing that we saw in Numbers chapter 12 with Aharon and Miriam. It's the same thing that we saw in Numbers chapter 12. You don't have to go anywhere, Aki. It's the same thing that we saw. The chickens have come home to roost, though. And I'm going to tell you why the chickens have come home to roost. Because now it's Aharon that contention is being brought to. You see, Aharon was in the midst of the contention when it was being brought to Moshe. But now the contention is being brought to Aharon's doorstep. You ever heard the old saying, you reap what you sow? What goes up must come down. What goes around comes around. You can go back to verse 4, Aki. Verse 4. Look at Moshe's response again. It says, and when Moshe heard it, he fell upon his face. Moshe was heartbroken. He was heartbroken again. Because see, what should have been dealt with and what should have not festered from Numbers chapter 12 has now made its way all the way over to Numbers 16 with different people. Now it's not just two, it's 250 princes, people who were established. Drop down to verse 8. Moshe said unto Korah, hear I pray you, ye sons of Levi, seemeth it but a small thing unto you. Highlight that for my key. Leave that one highlighted. Seemeth it but a small thing unto you, that Yahuwah of Israel hath separated you from the congregation of Israel. to bring you near to himself to do the service of the tabernacle of Yahuwah and to stand before the congregation to minister unto him. And he have brought thee near to him and all thy brethren, the sons of Levi with thee, and seek ye the priesthood also, for which cause both you and all thy company are gathered together against Yahuwah. And what is Aharon that you murmur against him? Moshe is like, Yah has given you a purpose. All of y'all, he's given you a purpose. He's chosen you. He separated you from the rest of the nation to perform the ministry of the tabernacle. Let me make it okay. Let me make it a little bit more plain. Let me go a little bit deeper. He says, Yah has given you a platform. He's given you the ability to demonstrate what he's doing in your life. But rather than you being happy about that, rather than you being content and focusing on doing the works that he's placed before you, rather than you valuing that as good enough, you want the priesthood also. And when he says the priesthood, he's talking about the high priest. So the Levites serve as the ministers in the tabernacle, and Aharon's sons served as high priests. But rather than them accepting the fact that Yah had established them as well, they wanted more. Just like Miriam and Aharon, they were ready to bring contention into the camp, and they were ready to talk down on Aharon and Moshe because they didn't value what the Most High Yah had done in their lives. And so in life, when people don't value what Yah is doing in their life is good enough, what they begin to do is they begin to look at the things that Yah is doing in your life and say, how can I tear that down? How can I tear somebody down to make myself look good? How can I tear somebody down to make myself look good? And I'm gonna tell you, Miss Picard, I stand beside some heavy hitters when it comes to this teaching of this word. I'm talking about some heavy hitters inside of Goshen Group, every one of them. And outside of Goshen Group, from people that we are connected with that's teaching this word, I stand beside some heavy hitters. But I'm going to tell you this. I can't be so focused on what the Most High has given Netanyahu. I can't be so focused on what the Most High has given Pakar Yahu, Kiefer, Yoel. I can't be so focused on what the Most High has given them that I'm not focused on the calling that he's placed on my life. Yeah, look, my ox will come in and they'll drop a heavy one. They'll drop a heavy message, and I say, you know what? I gotta get in here. I gotta get in here. Why? Because see, we all may be different parts of the body, but we all make up the body of Mashiach. We all make up the assembly of the Most High. And so Moshe is asking them, he's saying, look, why are you not satisfied with what the Most High has called you and set you apart to do? He's called you to be close to him. And now you mad at Aharon because he was designated as high priest, and Aharon ain't done you nothing. He's done nothing to you. Why are you bringing contention into the camp? Verse 12. And Moshe sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, which said, we will not come up. So Moshe sends for Dathan and Abiram, and they say, look, Moshe, tell Moshe we ain't coming. We ain't coming. Look at what they say in verse 13. It is a small thing that thou hast brought us up out of the land that floweth with milk and honey, to kill us in the wilderness, except thou makest thyself altogether a prince over us. Did y'all catch what they just said? They said that Moshe brought them up out of a land flowing with milk and honey. They're talking about bondage. They're talking about the land of Mitzrayim. They said, it's a small thing that you have brought us up out of a land that flows with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness. Why? Except to make thyself altogether a prince over us. They saying, look, all of you was fooling everybody. Moshe, you've been fooling everybody. You didn't bring us out of Egypt to take us to a land flowing of milk and honey, flowing with milk and honey. You took us out of a land that was flowing with milk and honey. You took us out of a place that we would rather go back to just to bring us to the wilderness for us to die, just for you to exalt yourself and stand over us as a prince. And so they accusing Moshe of being selfish and prideful. The one who always has the camp's best interests at heart. The one who prayed on their behalf when Yah was going to destroy them. The one who, according to Hebrews chapter 11, walked away from the riches and the lavishness of living in the culture of the Egyptians to return to his people and lead them out of bondage into a land flowing with milk and honey. They're accusing him of being selfish and prideful. The one who was known as meek or humble above all the men of the earth. You're going to say that about Moshe. I think they got something in their heart too. Drop it in the chat if you can see what I'm putting down. You can pick up what I'm putting down, what it appears that they got in their heart. Verse 14, Aki. Moreover, thou hast not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, or given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Wilt thou put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. Moshe, look, you can call all you want to. We ain't coming. We ain't coming. Go tell Moshe we not coming. Verse 15, it says, and Moshe was very wroth and said unto Yahuwah, respect not thou their offer. Moshe taking a different tone there, but look, he still didn't ask y'all to condemn them. He says, respect not their offering. He says, I have not taken one ass or one donkey from them, neither have I hurt one of them. Moshe is like, y'all, you know, I ain't done them nothing. I haven't done one thing wrong to them. I haven't taken anything to elevate myself. I've been humble, and I've done everything that you've asked me to do. But they speaking against me, so y'all don't accept their offer. Moshe like, look, it was never about me. It was never about me. Drop down to verse 20, Aki. Moshe like, it was never about me. It's always about what Yah has called me to do. But yet and still contention has made its way into the camp and into the assembly. In verse 20, it says, and Yahuwah spake unto Moshe and unto Aharon, saying, separate yourselves from among this congregation. I need you to leave that highlighted, Aki. I need you to leave that highlighted. Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. Guess what? Y'all not talking about consuming 250. Y'all talking about consuming the whole congregation. He's talking about the whole assembly. He's talking about the whole nation. He said, look, Moshe, I tell you what, I tried to teach them in Numbers 12. They didn't get it. And I can't have contention in the camp. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to destroy. I'm going to consume them in a moment. So Moshe and Aharon, what I need y'all to do is I need you to separate yourselves. Y'all is fed up. He like, look, I'm going to go ahead and deal with this. Third time. Here's the third witness. Watch Moshe's reaction. Verse 22. And they, highlight they, Aki, and they fell upon their faces and said, O Elohim, the El of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and wilt thou be wroth with all the congregation? It said, and they, Mishpachah, Aharon got it. He got it. He didn't understand it in Numbers chapter 12, but here in Numbers chapter 16, when the chickens have come home to roost, he got it. Because it said he fell down on his face too. He fell down on his face too and was repenting on behalf of the assembly. And see, in Numbers 12, he was asking Moshe to repent for their behalf. But Aharon got it. He learned from Moshe's reaction in Numbers chapter 12 when himself and Miriam had brought contention into the camp. He learned by Moshe's reaction. And when the contention came to him and Yah says he was going to destroy the entire assembly, he fell on his face with Moshe and petitioned the Most High that he would give them atonement or that he would forgive them. Verse 23, and Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the congregation, saying, get you up from about the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. You see, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram were the ones who came and withstood Moshe. And so Yah said, okay, Aharon, okay, Moshe, I hear you. I got you. But what you better do is go tell everybody else that they better get out of the presence of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, because I'm going to deal with them. Verse 25, and Moshe rose up and went unto Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spake unto the congregation, saying, Depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, lest ye be consumed in all their sins. Why did I take the time to read this portion, family? Why did I take the time to go into Numbers chapter 16? It's because when we don't promptly deal with contention in the assembly, it's going to begin to spread. It's going to begin to be, remember I talked earlier about things being counterproductive in day-to-day situations. It's going to begin to be counterproductive for the betterment of the assembly. How do we conduct ourselves when contention has entered into the assembly around us? And the answer to that is we separate from it. We got to separate from it. When I see contention that's rooted in pride, family, I separate from it. I separate, Mishpachah. If it's a video and I can tell that that video is rooted in pride and it's contention against somebody else, there was an old show called Andy Griffin. In Andy Griffin, there was a man named Barney Fife, and Barney Fife used to say, nip it in the bud. Family, I was 36 years old before I realized what it means to nip it in the bud. That means when it begins to fester, go ahead and cut it off. So when I see things that are bred in pride and bred in contention, I say, look, I gotta separate from it. I gotta cut it off. I gotta cut it off because I'm not gonna give it an audience. I'm not going to be some fuel that's being thrown on the fire to contribute to the dysfunction of the assembly of the Most High. I'm not going to do it. And so we see here that Yah says, look, okay, I'm going to spare the rest of the congregation, but you better tell everybody who don't want to face the judgment of the sins of these three. They better separate from it. So family, when contention begins to surround us, when it doesn't involve us and it surrounds us, we have to remove ourselves. Drop down to verse 32, Aki. Let's see what happens. And the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed them up and their houses and all the men that appertain unto Korah and all their goods. They and all that appertain to them, that's they and all that were related to them. Everybody who wanted to play a part with them, everybody who wanted to be associated with those three. It says that the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up. And everybody who was in the crowd, everybody who wanted to be a part of it, everybody that was egging it and cheering it on, may not have been participating directly, but everybody who wanted to be involved went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. And all that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, lest the earth swallow us up also. Verse 35, and there came out a fire from Yahuwah and consumed the 250 men that offered incense, because they had put themselves in a position to do something that they weren't called to do. 250 chosen men lost. 250 established men of renown, people that were needed in the assembly, 250 of them gone. Why couldn't our people learn from Numbers chapter 12? Why we have to lose 250 prominent people? Why do we have to lose people with high influence today? Why are we allowing ourselves to not serve in our calling because we couldn't learn how to navigate in times of contention? They just didn't get it. But it gets deeper. It gets deeper, family. Drop down to verse 41, Aki. It gets deeper. Because see, in verse 41, it talks about something that happens on the day after. It says, but on the morrow, all the congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moshe and against Aharon, saying, ye have killed the people of Yah. They blamed Aharon and Moshe, but Aharon and Moshe were the ones who dropped down on their faces and prayed that Yah would not destroy or consume the entire nation. They said, "Ye have killed the people of Yah." And it came to pass when the congregation was gathered against Moshe and against Aaron, that they looked toward the tabernacle of the congregation, and behold, the cloud covered it, and the esteem of Yahuwah appeared. And Moshe and Aaron came before the tabernacle of the congregation. And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, "Get ye up from this congregation, that I may consume them as in a moment." And they fell upon their faces again. Again. They were willing to reconcile with their people, or reconcile their people with the Most High again, even though they accused Aharon and Moshe of slaying the men of the Most High. It says that they fell upon their faces. And Moshe said unto Aharon, "Take a censer and put fire therein from off the altar, and put on incense, and go quickly unto the congregation and make an atonement for them. Forgive them, for they know not what they do." It just keep ringing in my mind, Mishpachah. Make an atonement for them. For there is wrath gone out from Yahuwah, the plague is begun. And Aharon took as Moses commanded, and ran into the midst of the congregation. And behold, the plague was begun among the people, and he put on incense and made an atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living. It says that he stood between the dead, the ones that the plague had already fell on. He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stayed. Now they that died in the plague were 14,700. All right. Because of contention in the camp in Numbers chapter 16, how many people died altogether? How many people died altogether? Let's see. Drop it in the chat. Let's see who's paying attention. How many people died altogether? There it is. That's it, Aki. 14,950 people in 2 days because of pride, because of contention in the assembly. How many people we got to lose? How long we got to be ineffective as a nation? How long are we going to allow our differences to bring contention into the assembly? Why did our nation have to lose 14,950 people in 2 days because of what's in the hearts of people? Now, Mishpachah, by now you understand that when contention is in the assembly, Yah is not pleased. He is not pleased. And we have to steer clear of all contention that is a result of pride. We can't be cheerleaders on the sidelines just cheering it on. But the sad part about it, family, is we see it all the time. We see it all the time, and we allow pride and contention to enter into our hearts. And when we do that, we can't live up to our call. I've seen people, Mishpachah, that have been given platforms. I've seen people who have been chosen. I've seen people who have impacted thousands. Because of the pride in their heart and their contention, they've not been able to walk in their true calling, and have not been able to be effective since allowing their pride to bring contention into the assembly. And the reason for that is because contention is not given by Yah. Yeah, we're all different. We're all different, and we're all different body parts that make up Mashiach. We're all different body parts that makes up the body or the assembly that represents the Most High. But Mishpachah, we can't allow the pride to get in our way. When contention begins to come into the audience, when contention begins to come into the assembly, we can't be the ones to give it an audience. Now, let me say this. Disagreements and disputes are going to happen. That's going to happen, Mishpachah. I'm not saying we can't disagree. I'm not saying we won't have disputes. Those things are going to happen. But we're going to look at the difference between differences and disputes, and contention. Because I stated earlier that there's a difference between the two. The difference between the two is contention brings offense. A dispute is just a disagreement. You see, the difference between a dispute and an offense, or a dispute and contention, is that an offense is when one has violated you through Torah. One has violated you through the process of breaking Torah. I'm gonna say that again so it can sink in. An offense is when someone has violated you through the process of breaking Torah. A dispute is when two people just simply don't agree. They just simply don't agree on a matter. And we're humans. We're going to have differences of opinion. We're going to disagree. But I gave the testimony at the beginning of this message for a reason. How do we handle offenses and disputes without allowing it to fester and become contention in the assembly? Aki, let's do Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Had somebody ask me the question the other day, and I praise the Most High for leading me here. But they said, hey, look, in this awakening, when somebody has done something wrong, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? Matthew taught us the perfect way. He says, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault. Go tell your brother, between thee and him alone. Highlight that, Aki. Between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, or if she shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother, or thou hast gained thy sister. You have to be willing to go to your brother or your sister directly if they have offended you. This is talking about a trespass. That's an offense. That's a violation that one has done to you through breaking Torah. He says, go to them alone. You have to be willing to go to your brother or your sister alone. Watch this, with the intent of gaining them. That's where we don't have a problem going to our brother and our sister, but that's where we mess up. We want to tell them off. We want to tell them about themselves. We want to point out what they did wrong. We want to call them out. We just want to make our point. That's not what Mashiach is saying. He says, he's not saying just go and tell them about themselves for closure on the matter. He says, you go to your brother or your sister directly with the intent of reconciling with your brother. Verse 16. But if he will not hear thee, if he don't want to hear it, if he was wrong according to Torah, we're talking about trespasses, we're talking about offenses, okay? Because there's a difference. If he does not want to hear you and he has violated you according to Torah, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of two or three witnesses every word may be established. He's saying, if your brother or sister won't hear you, then take two or three with you so everything can be verified, evaluated, and listened to, and a decision on the matter can be made. Now, remember, it's talking about transgression. Because no, we don't want to allow people to just get away with breaking Torah. So he says, go first to your brother or your sister and tell them how they violated you. And if it goes well, guess what? All is well. You gain a brother or a sister. If they don't want to hear you, you don't just cut them off. You go back with two or three so all things can be established. Everything can be evaluated. Sometimes we just need people in the middle. Sometimes we just need somebody who's outside of it with a level head to be able to say, you know what, Aki, you was wrong. According to this book, chapter, and verse, you was wrong, Aki. You wronged your Ak, and you got to make that right. Sometimes we need that. Sometimes when it's two people just in the heat of the moment, emotions are flying and nobody wants to hear one another. Sometimes we need that third party. Verse 17. What if they don't want to hear that though? What if they still don't want to come to terms with the fact that they violated you according to Torah? It says, and if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it to the assembly. But if he neglect to hear the assembly, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican. If this person is just okay with violating people according to Torah, and you've tried to go directly, you've tried to take two or three, you've told it to the assembly, and nobody can get this or this occult to understand that they have violated you according to Torah. They have trespassed against you according to Torah. He says, then you treat them like an outsider. You treat them like an outcast, and what that means is to cut them off. Just like Miriam, temporarily in Numbers chapter 12. Just like the prideful men, the 250 princes in number 16, you cut them off. Why? Because they have something in their heart. They have too much pride in their heart to admit that they have wronged you according to Torah, and that will eventually fester and spread into contention inside of the assembly. Now, that's for offenses and transgressions. You don't have to get the entire assembly involved just because you and Sister Patty or you and Aunt Billy have a difference of opinion. Just because y'all got a disagreement don't mean you got to get everybody involved, because this is specifically talking about trespasses against you in the process of violating Torah. It's an old saying that says that everybody's business ain't everybody's business. So how do we deal with having a dispute with the person? Because disputes and disagreements are going to happen. We're going to have differences of opinion. You may believe one thing, I may believe something else, and we may have a disagreement. How do we navigate that without allowing it to become contention? How do we handle disputes without contention? You know, there is a famous apostle who we like to call Rabbi Shaul. Some people may know him as the Apostle Paul. And Rabbi Shaul wrote a great portion. He wrote letters or epistles, which are a great portion of what we know as the New Testament. And Rabbi Shaul is so profound because his ministry was so far and his ministry was so in depth. His ministry reached so many people that many people today, if they say anything about this Bible, it's going to be centered around something that Rabbi Shaul or the Apostle Paul said or something that he wrote. But guess what? Just like we saw with Aharon and Miriam, just like we saw with those 250 princes, Rabbi Shaul was not the only one that was established and doing great works. There were other people out here that was doing ministry and doing great works. One of them goes by the name of Barnabas. See, Barnabas and Shaul for a long period of time were like right-hand men. They was two peas in the pie. You see one, you saw another. And they were out doing the works of the Most High. They were out traveling around, building assemblies, and they were out spreading what we know as the good news, or the news rather, or the gospel of Yahushua Mashiach. But Aki, jump to I'm coming right back there. But let's go to chapter 12. Let's go to chapter 12 and look at verse 11. Because we want to see, how do we deal with when we have disputes? How do we deal with when we have disagreements? In Acts chapter 12, verse 11, it says, and when Peter was come to himself, he said, now I know of a surety that Yahuwah have sent his Melachim, his messenger or his angel, and have delivered me out of the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews. Verse 12. And when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John. I like John, Aki. I like John. John, it says, whose surname was Mark. So we have a book in what we know as the Gospels that are written by a man named Mark. But we see here that his true name, his Hebrew name is Yehochanan. Okay. So I want to jump back over to Acts 13 and pick up at verse 2. Because Yehochanan or Mark is said to be cousins with Barnabas. Barnabas is Rabbi Shaul or the Apostle Paul's right hand man. In Acts chapter 13, verse 2, it says, and as they ministered to Yahuwah and fasted, the Ruach HaKodesh said, separate me Barnabas and Shaul for the work whereunto I have called them. I got a question, family. Drop it in the chat. Multiple choice. If you think that Barnabas chose and established Shaul and Barnabas, put a B in the chat. If you think it was Shaul, drop an S in the chat. But if you think that Yah chose and established Barnabas for the works that he had called them to do, drop a Y in the chat. That's right. That's right. We see it. Yah chose them. Go to verse 13, Aki. In verse 13, it says, now when Paul and his company loosed from Paphos, they came unto Perga and Pamphylia, and Yehochanan, let's see who's paying attention. Put it in the chat. Who is Yehochanan in the book of Acts? Who is Yehochanan? We just saw it. That's right. Mark, the one that we know as Mark. It says that Yehochanan departed from them and returned to Jerusalem. So remember, Barnabas and Shaul have been set apart to do the works that Yah has called them to do. They take Mark or Yehochanan along with them, but as they were out doing the works, for whatever reason, Yehochanan said, I'm going home. I'm not staying. Look, this putting in this work going overseas and all of this traveling to lay down the good news and do the works of the kingdom, I don't know about this. This too much. I'm going home. I'm going to let y'all have this. But see, Barnabas and Shaul, they were about the Most High's business. Go over to chapter 15, Aki. I'm about to get ready to wrap it up. Go over to chapter 15, verse 36. And we're going to see something that happens. Because in chapter 15, verse 36, the two people that I said were like two peas in a pod, Paul and Barnabas, they end up having a disagreement. They end up having a dispute. Okay. In verse 36, it says, and some days after, Paul said unto Barnabas, let us go again and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of Yahuwah and see how they do. And Barnabas determined to take with them Yehochanan, whose surname was Mark. So Barnabas is like, look, cool, let's take little Mark with us. This is going to be good for him. We're going to mold him and we're going to get him in the habit of preaching this gospel and building these assemblies. Verse 38, here it is. But Paul thought not good to take him with them, who departed from them from Pamphylia and went not with them to work. Paul was like, look, I ain't fooling with Mark. I'm not fooling with him because we were out doing work. He left us out there. He left us out there and he went on about his business. He didn't help us do the work. So I'm not fooling with Mark. But Barnabas is like, no, we need to take him with us. In verse 39, it says, and the contention was so sharp between them that they departed asunder one from another. And so Barnabas took Mark and sailed unto Cyprus. Now, I'm glad you highlighted that, Aki, because this word contention here is not the same thing that we saw when we looked at Numbers chapter 12 and Numbers chapter 16. This was a disagreement. This was a dispute. Now, they both felt strongly about either taking Mark or Yehochanan with them or not taking him with them, but they didn't allow it to be a continual back and forth and tear down each other. This was a simple disagreement. Verse 40, and Paul chose Silas and departed, being recommended by the brethren unto the grace of Elohim. So Barnabas and Paul, the two peas in the pod, they go in different directions. And so the reason that I wanted to come here is because the way to handle a dispute, not a transgression according to Torah. The way to handle a dispute without it becoming contention where we are tearing each other down is the same thing that they did. They first tried to talk about it. They both stated their case. They both stated their differences of agreement. They did exactly what the script says. They talked to each other about it. And what I want you to understand is if you can't find common ground, it's okay to put distance between yourself and another. It's okay for us to put different distance between one another. Even in our households, if we can't find common ground, it's okay for us to put distance between one another. What's not okay is that we bring contention into the house or contention into the assembly, and it becomes a back and forth, and now we both being fueled or we're all being fueled by pride. And so they allowed themselves to put distance between one another, but not with animosity, not with hate, but with love and patience. How you know that, Nail? I'm glad you asked. I'm gonna show you. But the end goal was to be able to reconcile with their brother. The end goal should always to be to reconcile with our brother. So Paul, he didn't want to travel with Mark or Yohanan. Okay. His issue was not with Barnabas. His issue wasn't with Barnabas. He didn't have a problem with Barnabas. Barnabas was his right hand man. His issue was with Mark going with them because he said, look, Mark left us hanging. And so I don't want to go with Mark. And he stood on that. When they couldn't find common ground, they agreed to disagree and they parted ways. But watch this. They kept doing the work of the Most High. If you can see that they parted ways, but they kept doing the work of the Most High, drop a hallelujah in the chat. Because see, they wouldn't like they wouldn't like Aharon and Miriam in Numbers chapter 12. They won't like the 250 princes in Numbers chapter 16. They didn't allow contention and pride to stop them from what Yah had called them to do. They said, look, we're going to put some distance between one another, but we both going to continue doing the work. And guess what? They did it without tearing each other down. The scripture doesn't say that Shaul went and started tearing Barnabas down. It didn't say that Barnabas went and started tearing Shaul down. They did it without tearing each other down. They just agreed to disagree. But watch this. Aki, I'm about to get ready to wrap it up. Let's do 2 Timothy in chapter 4. I'm about to get ready to bring it to the close, but I couldn't go through this study without giving my people some real world application. Let's do 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 9. It says, now in 2 Timothy, let me give you some backstory. Shaul is writing an epistle or a letter to Timothy, and Shaul is in prison. He's in prison at the time. And so he writes the letter to Timothy, and this is what he said, starting at verse 9. Do thy diligence to come shortly unto me, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Take Mark. Take Yehochanan. Take the one who left me hanging. Take the one that I had dispute and disagreement with, and do what? And bring him with you when you come to see me. For he is profitable to me for the ministry. Rabbi Shaul still had love for his brother. Even though they had a dispute, Rabbi Shaul understood that it was bigger than him. It was bigger than Yehochanan. It was bigger than Barnabas. It was about the works of the kingdom. It was about what was best. Just like Moshe, it was about what was best for the assembly. And yeah, so they had a disagreement and they parted ways, but Rabbi Shaul never wrote Mark off. He never wrote him off. In the epistle to Philemon, Shaul refers to Mark as a fellow servant or a fellow worker in Mashiach. He said, that's still my brother. That's still my brother. They had a disagreement. They had a dispute. They parted ways, but they didn't allow it to make them unprofitable in their calling. Demas separated in verse 10. Demas separated from Paul because it said he loved the world. He loved the world. Mark departed from Paul. Paul departed from Barnabas. Barnabas departed from Paul, but not because they were in love with this world. Demas left Paul because Demas was in love with this world, the present world. Paul, Barnabas, and Mark, they didn't leave each other or disassociate from one another because they were chasing clout. They weren't chasing the views, Mishpachah. They won't chasing assemblies. They won't yielding to the cheerleaders that was on the sideline saying, yeah, you tell them you right, you right. It was a simple dispute. It was a simple disagreement that they didn't allow to become prideful contention. And so in closing, family, what I want to say, these are my final words. This message is entitled Contention. And this message teaches us that disputes and disagreements are going to happen. We can't control that. Nothing we can do to change that. We're human. But we don't have to allow contention to cause us to hurt others, hurt our brothers or hurt our sisters, or we don't have to allow contention to fester from the pride in our hearts and be the reason that we attempt to tear down our brothers and sisters. We don't have to allow contention to be ultimately what makes us unprofitable in the works that Yah has called us to do. Because Yah has established each and every one of us for his purpose. And with the measure that he saw fit to instill in us to accomplish what it is that he wants us to accomplish for his esteem and his glory and for the assembly that has been put together for his name's sake. Mishpachah, Mashiach told us that those that are not against us are on our part, which means they are on our team. If they're not against us, they're for us. We don't have to agree on everything, but don't allow contention to be the reason that we become unprofitable and hurt our brothers and sisters. I want you to be blessed, Mishpachah. I bid you shalom, shalom, and I pray that this message blessed you in some sort of way and that it edified and that it encouraged you to continue to walk in the faithfulness that the Most High has called you in.